Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining me and my colleagues for this professional development workshop. We are Flushing Town Hall. Flushing Town Hall, we are a CIG multi-arts presenting venue. CIG means we are part of the Cultural Institutions Group run by the city. We are also a landmarked site in Flushing on Northern Boulevard. My name's Dan Bamba. I am the new director of art services here, and alongside my colleague Nancy, who is in the room with y'all handling the chat. We are the new art services department, and what we're really looking to do is to support all of you as artists, not just in Queens, not just in New York City, but everywhere. But in the end, we do have a focus on Queens and the borough that we live in, because I'm really passionate about it. And I think it's really important that we support our community of artists and the projects that you are bringing to our neighborhoods. So part of that is getting funded, because I always say two things that artists are always starving for, regardless of Queens, regardless of New York City, is first is going to be money. Second is going to be space. So here, hopefully we can help you with those opportunities that are coming up this fall to get a grant, to get your project funded, or possibly get a residency, whatever it might be. So it's my pleasure to introduce Sami Shumays, the Deputy Director at Flushing Town Hall. I want to thank him for being a part of this program. He'll be kind of leading the session. And what we'll do first is we will kind of go over just a general overview of best practices for grant writing, things that you already know, probably, hopefully, but if not, it's a little bit of a refresher course. And then after that, I want to say thank you to all you artists who submitted writing samples. We asked whoever was willing to submit their artist statement, project description, and community impact statement. And what we're hoping to do is have Sami just go over them and kind of see what happens in the mind of a panelist and what that thought process is. We'll have time for a Q&A at the end of the session, so please hold them for now. And there'll be times when we ask for questions, and if you can hold those until then, that'd be great. It's just hard to track them all in the chat. So thank you, Sami, and take it away.
Hello, everybody. As Dan said, I'm Sami Shumays. I am Deputy Director at Flushing Town Hall, where I've been in this role for the last 9 years. And I want to say something about Flushing Town Hall and about the grant making process, which is, so Flushing Town Hall has this commitment to diversity in arts programming and diverse artists representation. Our mission is global arts for a global community. And there, in this packet of people who submitted things for my review, there is a lot of diversity displayed. Diversity in terms of artistic disciplines, diversity in terms of cultural practices and cultural traditions. And that is wonderful. And so I'm coming at this with an eye that my evaluation of your grants is going to have nothing to do with anything aesthetic, no judgments around the quality of the work, no judgments around what I think about any particular cultural tradition or not. I say that not all panelists will have that perspective. Some panelists will have biases. But I'm going to focus in what I'm going to speak about in a different side of applications to grants, which is simply how to communicate best what it is you're doing, no matter what you're doing. So everything that I'm going to comment on will have nothing to do with work quality. We didn't ask for work samples. I can only guess based on what's written, the quality of your work. I'm assuming that you're all geniuses, and I wish you all the best in your creative path. So I'm simply going to speak about how well you're communicating about what you're doing. The second really major thing that I want to emphasize, and we'll emphasize as we get into some of these quick slides, is that the grant evaluation process is unfair. And it's unfair for a very specific reason. It's unfair because there's not enough time for panelists to fairly evaluate everyone's work. Evaluations are going to be very hasty, and I'll speak about that in a few more slides. But the result is that it is not fair. Now, I, as a panelist, and I forgot to mention my background. So in addition to my role at Flushing Town Hall, I ran the grants panels at Queens Council on the Arts between 2008 and 2009. I have sat on NISCA panels many times over the years, Department of Cultural Affairs panels, panels for other foundations, such as Chamber of Music America, a few others, the MAP Fund, I did that recently. I've done a ton of panels. I also, in my role at Flushing Town Hall, do a fair amount of our grant writing, even though we have a separate development department and a separate grant writer. So I have a lot of and then in addition to that, I'm a musician. I'm a performing Arab musician, and I have written grants for myself over the years. So I have a lot of experience in different sides of the grant application process, and that's what I'm bringing to the table here. So when I say that it's an unfair process, for example, at NISCA, we'll be sitting on a grant panel, and we'll have to evaluate something like 80 applications in 3 or 4 days. And each application might be 10 to 15 pages of reading. So that means each panelist is responsible for reading 800 to 1,200 pages and evaluating applications based on that in a period of X number of hours. So when you're in that position, no matter how much you want to be fair as a panelist, no matter how much you want to be equitable, you are only going to be able to respond to what jumps to the surface quickly, what you comprehend quickly. So the main rule in everything that I'm going to be telling you tonight is your goal is to communicate what you are doing as quickly as possible so that panelists are never left wondering what it is you're talking about. The moment that a panelist or any reader of your application has to wonder, what is this about? Their eyes glaze over because they still have 1,199 more pages to read. And they're going to be like, okay, I don't get this, moving on. So it's not fair. You may have invested your life into this work, but if you don't communicate about it clearly, you're not going to get the grant because people are going to be like, oh, okay, I don't get it. Let's look at these next slides. So this is something that you may have learned in elementary school, and it's probably worth like putting this in front of your computer screen even today as an adult as you write your grants. I should get in the first 2 sentences of your grant who, what, where, when, why, and how. That maybe seem like a tall order, but that stuff needs to be very clear. A panelist needs to know who you are, what the project is that you're doing, where it's going to take place, when it's going to take place, with what other artists, like the who else is doing it, and then the why and the how. But the why and the how also have to be super specific. And we'll get into that as we look at some of the community impact statements down below. We have on this slide the question of, does grammar and spelling matter? I'm not going to comment today about grammar and spelling. And in fact, as a grants panelist, I have specifically argued against other panelists who are critical of applications because of weak grammar and spelling. And I know we have a lot of folks here whose first language is not English. And I know in a lot of the panels that I've sat on, there are applicants who are great artists who are not native English speakers. So I am always advocating for artists not to be evaluated on grammar and spelling. But again, there are many people who don't share my view. So you have to consider that although grammar and spelling shouldn't matter, they're going to affect the clarity of your message. So if you are not a native English speaker, or your writing is, and be honest with yourself, if your writing is weak or you have issues with your writing, then show it to someone else. Ask someone to read your statement before you send it in. And that's the opportunity some of you are going to get today. Let's see the next slide. So as I said, about, which is really the subject of the third slide, but about the overwhelmed nature of grants panelist, your goal is going to be brief. Now, brief doesn't mean you leave out important details, but brief means you say what you have to say as quickly as possible, and you use simple and clear language that's going to communicate that who, what, where, when, and why. And as much as possible, avoid stuff that is flowery, avoid stuff that is overly imaginative. I've said this before. The place for your imagination is in the work itself. It is not in the grant application. The grant application is similar to a marketing statement. A lot of people in contemporary visual arts think that because of the way that wall texts are written, that you should be communicating about your stuff in a very philosophical way, in a way that really gets to your ideas on a deep level. And that is not how you should be writing grant applications, because panelists are going to be like, what the fuck is this? Pardon my language. And I'm introducing that language here because I'm going to be speaking pretty brutally and pretty frankly for your sake. So I'm going to apologize in advance to anybody if I offend you. I apologize, but I'm not going to hold myself back, because I want you to know what is in the mind of a panelist. What is in the mind of someone who reads something. And sometimes when I read some stuff, I'm like, what the fuck is this? I don't care about certain things, right? It's not that I don't care on a deep level. I care about your process. I care about your art. But I don't necessarily care about everything you have to say about it, especially if I haven't yet heard the who, what, where, when, right? I might care a little bit about the why if the who, what, where, and when is super clear. But if I'm getting the why first and it's kind of vague and I don't understand it, I'm going to be like, moving on. Let's see the next slide. So this is what I started off with. It's not fair, but it's your responsibility, if you want to get the grant, to think in those terms of what a grant panelist is thinking about. Panelists are going to be overwhelmed, so you need to think about that they're going to give a super short amount of time to what you are writing. They're going to glance, and if, this is the point too, if something is eye-catching and good on the surface and makes sense to them, then they will read more carefully. Like, oh, I really want to know about this. But if stuff is unclear, then panelists will just scroll on by and be like, oh, okay, this kind of doesn't make sense. And if you have to dig for it, if I have to read a sentence 3 times to get what's saying, I'm not going to read it 3 times. I'll read it twice and I'll be like, okay, I still don't get it. Bye. So that's the framework of what we're doing today. That's our last slide, right, Dan?
Yep.
Yeah. So we're going to be looking at, thank you. So a huge thanks to the folks who submitted stuff. We're going to be looking at your project descriptions, artist statements, community impact statements. I'm not going to say too much about what those should be as a preview, I am instead going to say, I'm going to use the applications that we have as a way to talk about what those should be. So I'll be like saying, okay, I like this, I don't like this. Here's why. Here's what I do like. Scroll up a little bit. Okay, so I'm just going to jump right in here. Oh, actually, before I do that, can everyone just take a moment and take a deep breath? Feel your seat. Feel your legs on the floor. I think sometimes it's worth checking in with your body and your attention. We're all stressed out, and some of you might get more stressed out as I talk. Dan was stressed out at the beginning of this. Dan's been setting up a whole new program for Flushing Town Hall. You guys are under grant deadlines. Sometimes it's helpful to just take a step back, take a breath, especially if we're dealing with intellectual topics, and remind yourself of where you are and stay in the present. One more breath and then I'll jump in. Okay, so here we have an artist statement. Take a second to read the artist statement about Gothic dance theater. I'm not going to read out loud. I just want you guys to look at it on your screen. Take a second here. So I would say that this is a pretty good artist statement. I saw a mission. I saw a certain amount of description of the disciplines covered: street art and contemporary dance. I heard something about themes and something about the artist himself, a blend of Mark's professional dance career, from commercial dance to musical theater to concert dance. If I wanted something more, it might be a little bit more about the background of Mark himself, some more of that professional dance career, some more about some of the elements that came in to form this aesthetic. Just sort of listing things as like, okay, from commercial dance to musical theater to concert dance. Listing doesn't really say very much, so a little bit more. Now, obviously, some of this has to do with space constraints, and sometimes you don't have space to do that. But this is what I would ask for if I wanted a little bit more. But this is a pretty good statement. Project description is quite weak. Have a look at it. This is weak for a couple reasons. One is that I'm a little bit confused by the phrase, our creative programming includes. I don't see something that says this project will include. This statement could be like, this is in general what we do. I'm not sure if this describes the project or not, right? Maybe that's unfair, but that's how it reads to me. I can't tell. This is to my point earlier. And then let's assume, let's take an assumption for the moment that it is describing this specific project. There's not enough detail on any of the components to really let me have a sense. Evening length productions via artist residencies, what does that mean? Productions of what? I mean, dance, obviously, right? But, productions via artist residencies, I don't know what that means. An outdoor summer tour, presumably of dance, is it one dance company? Free to the public, I don't see where, I don't see when, just summer, right? So there's no information here that's useful to me. Production support to artists in different styles. Okay, that's great, although that production support isn't described. What kind of support is happening? In fact, the idea of production support to these artists might actually be more useful under a community impact statement. So this is also super short. So I would like, if I saw this statement, I'd be like, I don't get anything out of this. 0. That's what I say to my daughter, 0. Anyway, so we'll read the community impact statement. Now, this community impact statement is also very weak, but it has some interesting information that should probably be in other sections. So, for example, the information about where GDT was awarded grants and where GDT has worked is probably information that's more useful in an artist statement because it's describing the artist. And I said that there was stuff missing in the artist statement about that. The commitment to paying their artists is great. It could be in a community impact statement. The opening, the pandemic has crippled the arts industry. Okay, that's great, but it's not about community impact. So let me talk a little bit more about what community impact should be. Because actually, in reading through most of the submissions, almost all of the community impact statements were very weak. A community impact statement is not the same as a marketing statement. And it is not the same as a what have we done already. Community impact is about how is your work going to impact the community. In other words, I'm going to present this dance program. So some of what was in the artist statement is actually community impact stuff, representing diversity, for example. But it's not just about what you want to do or what your goals or your hopes are. It is about what steps you're going to concretely take to get the community in, and what effect is your work going to have on that community. For example, I'm going to bring an art exhibit into a senior center, and I'm going to have an art workshop with the senior citizens. And it's going to impact this number of senior citizens by giving them the opportunity to express themselves creatively. That's a community impact statement. I talk about a specific community that I'm addressing, what I'm doing to get them to have some effect on them, and what's the effect going to be. None of that is in this community impact statement. So again, quite weak. Let's see the next one. Okay. Take a moment, read the GLOW Community Center. Artist statement first. Now, the first thing that I notice is something missing. It says the community and the cultural context. And I have no idea what community or what cultural context we're talking about. Do you see that stuff is missing? Have a look. The cultural context and share them with the community. Now, we're going to see in the project description that this is an organization that serves the Chinese community and does Lunar New Year festivals, right? So why is the Chinese community not mentioned in the artist statement? That is a key part of the GLOW community. I happen to know the GLOW Community Foundation, and you guys do great work, but you're not even saying Chinese in the artist statement, right? So that's a huge thing that's missing. Some of the mission stuff, your goals, promote cultural education and encourage a positive social lifestyle, that stuff is useful. Recognizing the lack and need for accessible cultural education, that is also very useful. Some of that might be useful in a community impact statement as well. But without the specific cultural context, it's like, what the heck is this? I don't get it, right? Emerging artists who specialize in art forms. Which art forms? Okay. So a lot of these things are too vague. Let's look at the project description. This project description is excellent. It is as excellent as the artist statement was weak. And in fact, some of the statement in the project description is what was missing from the artist statement. We know when it's going to happen. We know what it's going to be exactly. We know that this 1 hour cultural performance is going to include 26 short videos. We know that the videos are going to consist of more than 10 artist groups, and we know the specific cultural programs that are going to be represented. We know even how it's going to be delivered. Look at this detail. It's excellent. Artists share their works virtually through pre-recorded videos or live streams. How is the content accessible? Through our website and social media. What is the theme? In this one short paragraph, they've done everything that they need to do for a project description. This is like bravo, 100%. Let's move on to the next one. So community impact statement. Take a minute and read it. So my comment here is there's a little bit of community impact, but more marketing. And obviously there is overlap between marketing and community engagement, but like the digital marketing strategy includes outreach and collaboration. Okay, so outreach can be anything from we're sending a blast or a social media post that could engage these people to direct conversations with people. And for a community impact statement, especially, you want to know how these conversations are going to bring people in, and that's not there. So it's just purely marketing. The paragraph above it, will outreach to residents who share our building in one Flushing and do cross promotion, is decent, but again, it's more marketing than community impact. It's talking about how you're going to bring the community in. It's not talking about how you're going to impact that community. What is going to happen to the residents when they attend this program? Some of that stuff is what was said in the first paragraph, but it's not here. We want to know what is going to be the impact of these cultural programs on the community if they come and watch them. How are their lives going to be improved? How is the community going to be made more cohesive? That's what I want to hear. I don't see it. Again, the statement about what it would be and how many people have attended before, again, just talking about the numbers of attendees is again like a marketing kind of a statement. All right, let's go on to the next one.
Just a quick note on community impact. It seems like it is like the emphasis is on the impact, right?
I would say so. I would say so. I mean, it's called impact. Now, a lot of grant applications, I'll say this, a lot of grant applications will ask you for a marketing statement and a community impact statement. Certainly at Flushing Town Hall, when we're writing grants for bigger foundations, those are usually separate questions. But I would be careful, because if someone's wanting a community impact statement for their grant, is because that particular funder wants to see impact in the community. They're not asking you about your outreach. They're actually asking you about how you're going to change the community. And this is something to keep in mind. A lot of the things that are, and this is another reason why grant making processes are unfair, is that funders themselves want to be able to show something. They want to show to their board of directors that their funding had X, Y, and Z impact. So you need to give them something that they can share with the people who are contributing to their foundation, that, oh, we impacted these communities in these ways. That's what they're looking for. They're really not looking for how are you going to reach people, but how are you going to reach people, plus what is your reach to them going to do? All right, so let's look at this new application. Take a moment, read the artist statement. So my reaction to this artist statement is mixed. It's good and bad. I see a strong thematic commitment here. Like we want to dismantle oppression. We want to build community. Some things that we're responding to. But other than the phrase, as members of the acting studio drama school MFA program at Pace University, I have no clue what the artistic discipline is, or what are the processes going to be to achieve these goals. So this is a good way to say an artist statement has to both talk about why you want to do something, but the specifics of what you're doing, the specifics of who is doing it. The artist statement is the who of the who, what, where, when, and why, but it has to include a little bit of the what. Who is doing what is what the artist statement is. What are you as an artist doing? And why are you doing it? Why is acceptable within an artist statement? I see a lot of why here, but I don't see a lot of who, and I don't see a lot of what. So let's look at the project description. Okay, so this is slightly better, project description, but again, and this may be because my particular discipline isn't theater. When I see a narrative piece, the phrase narrative piece, I'm like, okay, so is this going to be something written or is it going to be a theater piece? I thought that this was a theater acting group. Oh, it's a narrative piece. Okay, it must be a theater group. That may sound dumb to you, like maybe I'm dumb, but consider that all panelists are dumber than me, right? People may have no idea, especially if it's a multidisciplinary panel. You can't just say narrative piece. You have to say it is going to be, if it is a theater piece, it's going to be a narrative theatrical piece. And what is going to happen in the theatrical piece? I see what you want to do. You want to spread awareness of systemic racism and that it will be aired in hopes of empowering students. Aired in hopes of empowering students is more community impact. I still don't know enough about what is actually the project. I don't know. For example, okay, you're bringing Black women together in solidarity to share their traumatic experiences. How are they going to share those experiences? Is this going to be a piece where these women are going to come on stage and speak about what they're doing? If so, say so. Is it going to be a piece where people are interviewed in advance and stuff is collected and then they're going to speak about their experiences? I've seen these kind of things from, for example, Ping Chong Theater Company does these kind of things where they interview people about their own personal experiences and then create a theatrical piece about it. Theater of the Oppressed does different things, but there's no specificity here in terms of what exactly is going to happen, and that's what's missing. So the theme is great, but the specificity is missing. Let's look at community impact. So what is good about this community impact statement is the very clear goals. So goals are a good thing in community impact. You want to address systemic issues. You want to address dismantling institutions. You want to commit to liberation of Black people and abolishing, transforming, and rebuilding racist and discriminatory structure of the active studio. Okay, those are great, but I don't have any idea about the how. How is your work going to do these things? Is your work going to emotionally impact people in power so that they reconsider their views? Is your work going to catalyze communities to take action to address these issues? I don't know because you're not saying so. You have to say it. So again, this is a case where like this project, if I was on a panel and I saw this, I'd be like, I really, really, really want to support this because the mission is so important. To dismantle anti-Blackness is so important. To rebuild racist and discriminatory structures is so important. But you haven't told me how. So I would be super frustrated as a panelist because I'm like, I really want to love this project. I have no idea you haven't communicated about what you're doing. So I would probably give it a bad score because I'm like, I don't know how you're going to do it. You haven't told me. Let's read the next one. All right, have a read at the artist statement. I think that this is a fairly decent artist statement. It's a little bit out of order in the sense that I kind of don't quite 100% get what's happening until the end. The phrase "to achieve this, I've been making original photographs." Like, I kind of would like that to be higher up. although maybe that's a project description kind of thing. I do see what are the components of the creative process, so that's great. I do see what are the goals, queer identity, survivorship. I do see that this is a long-term project. I might want a little bit more specificity about these different artistic disciplines and how they're working, but I get a sense that it's a multidisciplinary project. There's a little bit, so undisclosed locations gives shape and space to a geography through the borough of Queens. This is where the original photographs of 50 sites should be right at the front of this paragraph at least, because I don't see how I'm giving shape and space to geography of these sites. Okay, spanning public records to examine. Okay, how are the public records going to be displayed? Some of this, again, is, I think, more clear in the project description. But what I'm telling you here is that although the components are there, you can see me as a reader already kind of guessing and trying to fill in pieces and trying to make connections on myself. So already me as a panelist, as a reader, I'm having to do more work than I should to really get it. So this is a case where I think most of the elements are there, but there is a lack of clarity in step A, B, C, D, and E. So I really understand what it is that is happening and what is the artist statement. It's not terrible, but it is not strong. Let's have a look at the project description. Okay. Similar issue with the project description. A lot of the components are there, but the ordering is weak, and there's certain things that have to be assumed. When I read this, my assumption is that this is going to be the production of a photography book. But it doesn't say that. Look very carefully at what's written. It doesn't say, I will produce a photography book. Does that sound dumb to you that I just said that? Then you need to think about panelists as dumb. Panelists are extremely smart people, but when you only have 15 seconds to read something, you're dumb. If it doesn't say, I will produce a photography book, then the panelists are going to wonder, is he producing a photography book? He says the stuff is there to produce a photography book. Does that mean a photography book is going to come out of it? Do you understand what I'm saying here, guys? This is like, it may seem super dumb and basic, but you have to be at that level. This should be at the top. I'm going to make this assumption now, and it's still an assumption. Okay? It's still an assumption that this is a photography book, but on the basis that I know that this is a photography book, which I don't, I would say I would write this like this. The project is to produce a photography book that includes my original photographs, archival research, a collaborative timeline. My goal is this, and then paragraph 2 comes after it, and paragraph 2 makes a lot more sense. I'm sorry, paragraph 1 becomes paragraph 2. The grounded in primary research goes down under it. This is what I've said earlier. You spell out the who, what, where, when, and then the why makes more sense in context. If you start with the why or the inspiration, then people are wondering, okay, the inspiration is great. I don't know what it is yet. And then I have to go back and reread it? No. Right? So all the information is here in this project description, but the ordering makes it a weak description. And the ordering and the lack of clear statement. This is a photography book. Let's look at community impact. I think this is a fairly decent community impact statement, but there are some key components that are missing. We're talking about counteracting erasure. Is, I think, this phrase, to counteract such historical erasure, that I would say is the impact. Okay? I didn't get that until the very last phrase. And then the question is, this record of everyday places is going to counteract erasure. How? In other words, who is going to see it? How are they going to get to see it? Right? Counteracting erasure doesn't mean you're not trying to mobilize people to protest against something. You're not trying to change power structures in other ways. This is enough of an impact, counteracting erasure. That's a clear statement. But if I'm lacking an understanding of how and when this project is going to counteract erasure, I'm still missing something. So I hope that makes sense. Let's go to the next page. Now, have a look at the artist statement. This is a great example of something that's going to contradict everything I've said before. I like this artist statement. It doesn't spell stuff out very clearly from the start, but it has a hook. It tells right away, I'm fully embracing my identity as an outsider. And that's a hook. I've been an outsider. So we're getting this, like, who is this person? We're getting in 2 short sentences a sense of who this person is right away. It's not very flowery language, and and that's good, because if it was flowery, I would be like, okay, I don't give a damn. But here, there's like, okay, there's a perk of moving to it, right? We already get the sense that this person wants to be an outsider, wants to be provocative. So it's kind of like, I'm intrigued already. So if you can create a sense of intrigue, you can violate some of the rules that I've said before. But you have to be very careful to do this kind of thing, right? It has to come very organically, and it has to be short and quick. And what's interesting here, again, I'm contradicting exactly what I said in the last statement. You might be thinking, oh, he's a Chinese queer writer who writes about immigrants, racial issues. Okay. We didn't even learn that this person was a writer until that paragraph. And he doesn't say I'm a writer. But yeah, I know that he's a writer because of the way that this is written. This is excellent writing. This is like, maybe this person is obviously the person's a playwright. So he knows how to hook you. Right? So if you're a good writer and you're writing about writing, you can do some of these things. You can violate some of these rules, right? He's communicated that he's a writer by saying, you might be thinking he's a writer, right? So I'm already intrigued, I'm already hooked. But at the same time, all of the stuff is there. We know, because he's putting it in this sort of tongue-in-cheek kind of way, that he writes about immigrants, racial issues, sexualities, Asian culture. And then he's like, no, not wrong, right? There's a sense of humor here that pulls you in. And then he really is very clear. There will be main characters who are Asian, queer, struggling. My works have political messages. My responsibility is to create theatrical experience to entertain the audience. So even though this stuff wasn't up front, it's all spelled out in that artist statement. And I would think that this is an excellent artist statement. Have a look at the project description. Okay. Project description is good, but it's missing several key things. For what it says, it's excellent. Again, it has good writing that is very clear. It tells you what it is. It's a musical, what it does, what the story is about, who is writing the music, lyrics, and orchestration. So all of that stuff is great. What I don't know is who's going to put on the project, when is it going to take place, where is it going to take place, who's going to be involved in the production, what are the steps of the production, what is the other, there's a lot missing here. So it's good for what it is, but it's missing key components of a project. So a project is not and this is worth then reiterating, a project is not simply your artwork. When you're asked to describe your project, you're not simply asked to describe the work of art. You're asked to describe the work of art and its conveyance to the audience. The work of art and its production. The work of art and its presentation. That's what a project is. A work of art, this project description could be about, I'm going to write this musical at home alone and keep it to myself, and nobody's ever going to hear it. Right? That could be the project, to write a musical for yourself. And this project description would be suitable for that. It could also be a project to put on a musical at Queen's Theatre in summer of 2022, right? But I don't know. Let's read the next one. Okay, there was no community impact. Okay. Let's look at this one. Scroll up a little bit. Okay. Can we make this a little bit smaller? Yeah. See if we can fit the whole thing. Have a look at this, because this is one long project description. This is a little bit longer than we asked for, but I'm going to evaluate it anyway, because some project descriptions are supposed to be this long. So I'm just going to evaluate this on terms of, let's assume that this particular grant application asked for a long project description. So have a quick read. I'm going to read it again. Let's take a minute with it. So I see in this project description, artist statement, project description, and community impact all rolled into one. And what I would say is, it would probably be helpful to clarify and separate some of those elements as a starting point. Because again, project descriptions want to be specific. You want to know what is happening. I don't really know what the project is until paragraph 2. And I see my performance will last 10 hours. And then what the performance is. If I were recommending you how to write this project, I would say this project is a performance art piece that will take place in Jamaica Bay, last 10 hours, and will include, I will spend the day moving in and out of the water, describing the piece, right? So we understand the piece. In paragraph 2, we thoroughly understand what is going to happen, and that's great. So paragraph 2, except for the fact that it doesn't start with, I am going to do a performance art piece. Again, remember, I've told you, treat the readers as though they're dumb. If you don't say, I'm going to do a performance art piece, when I read, my performance will last 10 hours from sunrise to sunset in mid-October, this could be a music performance until I get to the third sentence. It could be a reading. It's a performance. I don't know what kind of performance it is. I'm a musician. I say my performance lasts, okay, I'm going to go play violin for 10 hours on the shore. Fine. Right? That's not what it says. It needs to say this is a performance art piece that will blah, 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 blah. But most of the second paragraph is quite clear. Now, there is a lot in here that is philosophical. And a lot of grant panelists will not have patience for this, even if they agree with the philosophy. I think that this is very important stuff that you're writing here. It would be great in an essay or a poem. But it's not telling me too much more. I would say the 3 paragraphs, paragraph 1, paragraph 3, and paragraph 4, that are largely philosophical, could be condensed into one paragraph. Why are the oceans important? What does Jamaica Bay represent? The asymmetric boundary between humans and nature. That's an intriguing statement, right? and why do you want to emphasize this natural wonder? And this is a show how we can protect it. So this is where, pardon me. This is where there's a potential community impact statement here in show how we can protect it. Okay, how? Presumably you're not assuming that protecting that you're showing people how to protect it by taking things in and out and setting them up in a circular fashion. This is not a literal showing people how to do that, right? You're making an art statement that's going to make people think, that is going to make people have deep philosophical thoughts about it. If you want to talk about showing how we can protect it, that's a concrete thing. We're not expecting everyone to go and spend 10 hours moving objects back and forth, and that's how they're going to protect it. But if you can articulate something about how the actual performance art piece expresses the life support aspect of the ocean, and what are some of the things you're going to bring in and out are going to do that, and who's going to be there, and how that is going to catalyze them to action, right? Then there's the beginning of a community impact statement. You hope to represent a meditative process of regeneration, balancing, and interbeing. I started this workshop by saying, hey, let's take a deep breath. But I also said something specific about it. I said, we're all stressed out. We need to connect with our bodies in order to be able to process the information we're about to see. So I made a community impact statement there. I took an action, right? I don't see that here. We hope to represent a meditative process. You could say, for example, this performance is meditative. I hope to bring people into a meditative state with me where they commune deeply with nature, and I hope that deep communing will enable people to then place more value on the oceans. All of these components are here in the statement, but it needs to be spelled out in that kind of dumb way that I'm talking about. This is a great example of something where this is performance art speak that isn't clear to a panel. Let's go to the next one. So let's read the artist statement. So the artist statement is pretty good, although I kind of want to know, because there's a lot of artistic disciplines listed here: performer, director, designer, and educator. So creating community-driven ensemble work. Again, this is a case where be careful about theater world dialogue. Ensemble work to me as a musician means, okay, I'm putting together community music ensembles, right? Again, dumb, but you have to spell this stuff out. So we're talking about presumably theatrical ensemble work. And so I'm then again making certain assumptions, giving space for dialogue that I see down in the artist statement. So is this ensemble work that includes the views of different people? I'm guessing probably it does, because it's ways for people to think about and discuss emotional intimacy. So it's a lot of good themes here, but still a little bit of lack of clarity in connecting the dots between the type of work and the goals, right? I see types of work over here and I see goals over here, but I don't quite see how they connect. So maybe we'll see more in the project description. Let's have a look at the project description. Okay, so this project description it shares in common with one of the project descriptions, I think, two ago, where there is a clear description of what is going to be produced and a clear description of the themes. We see that it's going to be a series of interactive audio pieces, and we see how those audio pieces are going to arise. They're going to be coming from a community of people who are going to be brought together, have meetings, and those discussions are going to create collaborative audio pieces. We're going to see a shared document as a starting point for, right? So there's a lot of detail about the creative process and how this thing is going to come together. But what's missing is, where is this going to be shared? Where is it going to be shown? Is there a venue where I'm going to show it at? Am I going to put it, for example, okay, it's audio work. Maybe all I need to do is say, this is going to be on my website and people can do it. Or maybe it's going to be shown at the Queen's Museum because they have a room where they're going to play the audio pieces. Or, right, I don't know that. I don't know what's the final goal of the audio work, where and how it's going to be delivered to the audience. And that is a very key component. In addition to then obviously the where and the when and the how of delivery, right? We have the where, the when, the who, and the how of creation, but we don't have the who, what, where, when, and how of delivery. I hope that distinction is clear to folks. Let's go to the next one. So we may not get through everybody, and my apologies for that. These are in the order they were submitted, right?
Yep. But just to let you all know, those that we aren't able to go over here, just for the sake of time and to be respectful of everyone's time, we'll send you notes separately, directly. So thanks again, guys, for all your submissions. These are really great to go over.
I'll keep going for a little bit, but again, this is also an important lesson. Again, I told you everything's unfair in these processes, right? This was a first come, first served process. This is as unfair as a grant application. When you get stuff in quickly and you submit it quickly, you know, you're going to be seen, you're going to be heard. Again, it's just a lesson. There are lessons in every aspect of this. Like, my rushing through it is really realistic to how much time people are going to spend reading your stuff. You're going to spend 3 hours writing one page. People are going to spend 2 minutes reading your page. So that's like, there's an asymmetry in the amount of thought you put into it versus the amount of thought that people get out of it. And this is fairly realistic what we're doing here. All right, so let's have a look at this artist statement. This is a fairly decent artist statement, but I feel like, because it starts with as a storyteller, and then it says there are songs involved farther down the line, I'm suddenly like a little bit confused. I would want to, and I've actually seen April, I've seen your work. I don't know if April's in the meeting. She's actually presented at Flushing Town Hall. So I know that April is a fantastic artist and does really fantastic storytelling and song together. But it takes a minute in this artist description for that to come out. So this is a case where I, as a panelist, happen to know the person and like, I'm making assumptions. But if you read this, it's like, I want to know from the start that there's story and song together, because that's an interesting thing. It's not just storytelling and it's not just singing. It's storytelling and song together. And that could be a little bit clearer right up front. This, again, performance style incorporates audience interaction. That is helpful. I'm hesitant to say too much about it because it's clear to me because I've actually seen one of these performances, so I get it. There could be a little bit more specificity on it, but I think it's decent. So let's read the project description. This project description is weak. I don't really see what the project is until the second paragraph. There's a lot of rationale in the first paragraph. Develop a roaming gardening community as well as a collaboration with the youth theater interaction. That sounds like a very complex project, and I don't even have any idea of like what are the details. There's so much detail missing. Like I got from the first paragraph that we're talking about storytelling, and then suddenly a roaming gardening community. What's the connection? There's some community impact stuff here that probably should be in community impact. Creating a space for families to meet is community impact. But then the collaboration with the youth theater interaction. Okay, what's the collaboration? Are you going to invite them to the gardening space? Again, I'm making assumptions. There's not enough of a project described here, so it's quite weak, the project description. It's beautiful. Like I like the ideas presented, but I don't have any idea really about the project beyond a couple little details. Let's look at community impact. Community impact here is fairly decent. There is a clear sense that there is something community involvement. Families are coming and involved in growing something, and that will make a lasting impression on the town and will put them there. There could be a little bit more detail about how, but at least I'm seeing the key elements of a community impact statement, which is what is it going to do, for whom, and how is it going to impact them? Let me repeat that. The key components of a community impact statement are what is going to happen, for whom, which community, and how is it going to impact them moving forward. And those components are there. They could be a little bit clarified, but they're there. Yeah, I think it's decent. Let's go to the next one. Okay, take a moment, read the artist statement. I think this is a very clear artist statement. We get that it's a painter. We get what's the cultural tradition that is based on. We get certain more details of genre. We get something about the materials used, and then we have a philosophical statement that follows it. Right, the second paragraph. The second paragraph is fine, but if it were the first paragraph, I would be annoyed. Right? If these paragraphs were reversed by integrating Korean tradition with new, I'm just giving an example because some of the project statements we had were exactly that format, where this second paragraph statement came first as a like, this is kind of what I think about what I do, but I want you to read it here. In this context, that second paragraph totally makes sense because we already know what it's about. So let's look at project description. Very short, but nothing is missing. So I don't have any complaints here. It could be more detailed, but I know what it is, group exhibit, what artists are going to be. I mean, if I wanted more, it might be who are the 12 artists, for example, if I wanted anything else, right? If there was more room here, you could list the artists. But we know that the artists and where they're going to be exhibited and when. It's great. Read the community impact statement. So this is not a great community impact statement. It is a philosophical statement. And there's a very important word here that I want to highlight for you guys to avoid. In the last paragraph, it says, "We hope this exhibition brings a sense of hope and comfort." If you're hoping something will happen, you are not making it happen. You are not doing community impact. And I've seen lots of artist statements. "We hope that my work will inspire people to do this." I don't care what you hope. Nobody cares what you hope. Panelists want to know what you're going to do. They want to know how your thing is going to inspire people, how your work is going to bring a sense of hope. To whom? There's a lot in this community impact statement that could be used in a good community impact statement, right? We could talk about how it is permeating like the live by displaying the everyday lives of Korean people. It is inspiring the local Korean community to blah 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 blah, right? Or how are we bringing in again, this is a case where you need a little bit more marketing. How are we bringing in the Korean community in order to have this experience, and what's going to the impact going to be? All right, let's go to the next one. Yeah, let's make it a little smaller. Okay, have a quick look at this. No offense, but this is terrible. This is rambling and unfocused. There are a lot of elements in here that are useful, that could be included, but it needs to be reorganized. It needs to be organized so that we know, right, my life as an artist. Okay, I wanted to be in the art field. I used to like drawing and painting, and then okay, so I figure out by third sentence that this person is a visual artist. And okay, different media, but it's still kind of jumbled. And then there's these questions, these philosophical questions that are thrown in the middle. And I'm like, I do not care. Right? My response to this is I do not care. And you might be a genius, you probably are, but I don't care. Right? If you get a panelist to read and say like, "Oh my God, you just like rambled on and on, I stopped caring," then people are going to be like, "I don't want to fund you," and the work might be brilliant. Right? So you're talking in the last paragraph, my works address sexuality and our relationship with our bodies. Instead of embracing these issues, they're viewed as taboos. Okay, that could be a community impact statement. It could be the seed of a community impact statement. Because sexuality and relationships with our bodies are taboos, I'm going to present work that celebrates the body or celebrates sexuality and is going to invite people into this. But you're then, instead of saying that, you're saying these erroneous and hypocritical notions lead us to have double standards. It's my right. Suddenly you're veered off from communicating to the audience of, and by I mean audience, I mean the grant panelists. You're communicating about a problem, and then instead of saying how your work is going to solve the problem, you're just rambling and ranting about, okay, these erroneous and hypocritical notions. Yeah, we know they're erroneous and hypocritical. I'm sure everybody in this room thinks that our society is hypocritical about the way that sexuality and our relationships with our bodies are viewed. That's actually a fairly common view among enlightened arts folks like us. Like I agree with this stuff like off the bat. I don't know how your art is going to address it because it's too rambling. You're talking about goals that you're addressing, social issues, women's issues, personal struggles, seeing beauty. Again, it's unclear. It's unclear how. It's unclear what. It's unclear what's the connection between the subject matter and the themes you want to address. And I've already spent way more time in critiquing this than I actually would as a panelist. Because if I saw this and I skimmed through this as a panelist, I'd be like, no, I don't even get it. Bye. So you already got way more than me than this write-up deserves. No offense, right? I'm just telling you, this is how it's going to be received. Let's do a few questions very quickly, because those requests came in first. First come, first serve is our rule today. And then after I answer a few questions, I will dive back in and see what we do. So can we kill the screen and let's just look at each other in the eyes for a few minutes.
Yeah.
All right. A couple questions. Do not give me long-winded questions. Give me specific questions.
So just to make it fair, can we just have someone, whoever wants to ask a question, we'll keep it
Do
to
the
like
do
3.
the
Can you
raise your
raise your
hand
hand?
thing. Yeah.
All
Do
right,
you
great.
raise your hands?
Hi, Stephanie. Let's start with you for.
Hi, thank you so much.
Do the raise your hand function, by the way, people.
All right. All right. As a visual artist, we do the exhibition, right? How do we describe our, unless other than seeing the artwork, how do we impact people? You know, what should I say? Like for the community impact? Because all I do is present the artwork and let the people see it, right? So how do I describe it? Like,
So this is something to keep in mind, right? These community impact statements were not necessarily always traditionally a part of grant applications, and they're not going to be a part of every single grant application you do.
okay.
What you're describing, Stephanie, is a perfectly valid artistic process, and for some grants, that is going to be enough.
Okay.
But if they're asking for community impact, that's not enough.
I see.
So community impact is always about how are you bringing in the community in, what is the community you're bringing in, and what is going to be the effect on them. Simply having a musical performance or having an art exhibit or having a theater piece is, I consider it a valuable experience. I don't necessarily go to everything that I go to as a consumer of art wanting to see community impact. I just like art, right? Or I like music or I like theater. That's great. But if community impact is being asked, you have to be able to articulate that. So just showing stuff on a wall and inviting people in is not community impact. As these, and this is again, this is the question. I said this earlier, but it's worth reiterating. A lot of foundations are looking for these statements because they want to justify their own work to themselves, to their funders, to white papers that they put out about how much they've impacted the community, a lot of which is bullshit. You have to deal with the fact that you have to deal with bullshit to get money.
Okay, got it.
Okay?
Thank you so
So it doesn't mean that community impact is not real.
much.
It doesn't mean that it's not a legitimate activity, but the way that it is framed in paragraph long things, community impact is work. Community impact is like, oh, we have a community outreach person who's going to go meet all these people in the community, find out what their needs are, and then create a project that is going to address their needs in this sort of way. Not everyone has the capacity to do that kind of thing, but that is what community impact is. I know that from like, what is community impact at Flushing Town Hall? It's like, well, we have a full-time staff members who are involved in community outreach, who develop programs based on that community outreach. That's community impact.
Exactly. Yes.
So I understand that an individual artist trying to create community impact is up against a certain kind of barrier of, let's say, lack of realism on the part of foundations. But if you want to get the grant, you have to be able to speak that language. I'm just being practical for you.
I'll work on it. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Great.
Next question.
All right, Nicholas, you're up.
Hello, I apologize. I recently had jaw surgery, so it may be hard to understand me. Hopefully that's okay. So my question is, essentially, I'm a musical artist, and for me, if I had a project where I wanted to bring in more of a high-profile artist to perform within the community, and obviously that would be a large impact upon the budget. How would I form a compelling project description based on the fact that it would take a toll on the budget of the project?
I'm not quite sure I understand why that would be a problem. In other words, just because the artist is high profile and costs a lot of money, the element of the project description questions are always about just saying who, what, where, when, and how, right? So you would just simply say, we're bringing this artist. This artist has such and such a profile. If there's a budget question, their budget is such and such. But you can still talk about this artist is going to be presented at this venue at this time. The ticket prices are going to be this. These are the communities that you can be as very specific. That who the artist you're presenting doesn't have any effect on your ability to be specific.
Got it.
Let me say this again. The purpose of the project description is for the panelists to be able to read your paragraph and immediately know what to expect when they go to your event.
Got it.
That's
so
the
as
purpose.
long as they're well suited to the project itself and you illustrate that well within your whole proposal, then it doesn't matter in terms of the budget.
No, I mean, it may matter in terms of a budget question. That if there is a separate question that is asking about how realistic your budget is, and you have a super high, like expensive artist, you better show in your budget that, oh, we're raising money from this other source to cover some of that budget, or our ticket prices are going to be this to cover that budget. Like if you do have high expenses, you have to be able to show them. We didn't talk about that today. That, you know, it's worth mentioning to people that budgets also are under the same level of scrutiny as I've applied to these other things. You have to be realistic about what expenses are. And if the grant that you're applying for doesn't cover the entire expense, you have to be able to show where you're getting the money from.
Got it. Are there any specific resources that you suggest in terms of learning more about writing effective budget proposals?
Stick with us, and we'll be having one in the near future.
Probably do a budget workshop.
But we definitely will. It would just be another hour and a half if we tacked on budgets. So thanks a lot, Nicholas.
Okay, much appreciated.
But plus, I think our team is putting together also other artist resources. You know, there's a lot of stuff you can read online about that. I don't know, Dan, Mancy, if we're going to be putting some stuff up. We hope to make some general written resources available.
Yeah.
Great. Thank you.
So we'll have that. It'll be on our artist services page, but we're slowly building that out for more resources too.
Beautiful.
But yeah, we'll definitely be having a budget workshop. Thanks a lot, Nicholas. Flor?
Hi, thank you so much. I really appreciate your clarity and your brevity. My question is, would you write in the first person or third person? I struggle with whether I write my statement as I or as Flor did or Flor sees.
Brevity is the soul of wit, after all, right? I prefer, if you are writing it about yourself, to write in the first person. In other words, I prefer complete clarity about what is happening. I am going to do this. I am going to do that. Now, a lot of grant applications will not be written by the artist.
Right.
So, for example, Flushing Town Hall, when we submit our application to the NEA for the artist that we're going to present in a future fiscal year, we say this artist will do this, she will do this, he will do this, right? But that's clarity because we, Flushing Town Hall, are writing the grant application and we're describing what. If you are the artist, I recommend writing in the first person.
Okay, thanks. Great.
All right, so thank you for your questions.
All right, I'll go another 8 minutes. Let's see how much I can tear apart.
You want to? So we'll go back to our list and yeah.
All right, let's have a look. Okay, so what is good here is goals, mission, but I don't know what kinds of folk art. Right, we learned that in the project description, that the folk art is calligraphy, paper cutting, arts and crafts. Yeah, please make it 150. But we don't see in that first, right? We just see folk art, which is a huge category. So again, it's like you have to be careful if 90% of what you're writing is good, but you leave out something key, like the what, people are going to be confused. again, some of this stuff, what you want to do to give the younger generation the opportunity to contact, right? These are things that could be part of a community impact statement. And it's okay to include some community impact stuff in your artist statement if it's a broad general goal of your practice overall. So for example, some artists in general are doing community impact work. This is worth clarifying to Stephanie, who's like, oh, well, I just show work on the wall. It's fine. Some artists generally do work that is just work, and then they do specific community projects. Some artists do community projects all the time, and then it's appropriate in an artist statement. Let's look at the project description. Okay, this is a case where I would recommend, like, it's obvious that this is not a native speaker or writer of English, and that there's some challenges with the writing here. I can figure out what's going on, but this is a case where you should have this read by an English speaker. But here's what I would say about this. The ordering is off. The information is there. We know that there's workshops that are teaching Chinese calligraphy, paper cutting, arts and crafts, right? But again, this is a case where a swift reading, someone who's not careful would be like, right? It should be, there will be workshops teaching, right? It just says workshop teaching of. Some of that's grammatical. Some of that is just simply lacking these very basic statements I've been saying over and over again. I am doing a blank. I am hosting a blank. This project will be a blank, right? Those kind of statements are necessary. For the Chinese, the goals here, maybe that's a community impact statement. We know where it's going to be. It's at Flushing Town Hall and Queens Public Library. We don't know enough about the when. We don't know how many workshops. We don't know how long the workshops are going to be. We don't know who's going to be invited. So this is a combination of missing information plus slightly awkward wording and phrasing. It's not the worst I've seen, because there are certain key specifics. We know that there's going to be immigrant families and children coming. But the weakness of the writing here is a bigger impact than it is in some of the other ones we've read. Well, let's look at community impact. Okay, here there is a fair amount of impact described, right? Getting people to feel that they want to go to a library. Getting people to feel that they want to learn Chinese culture. Programs allow you to feel closer with someone, right? So I see community building present in here, right? Some of the goals are community oriented, but I'm lacking the how. How is this project going to do those things? So you see there is community impact described, but we don't know how the project is going to achieve that community impact. And like I said in one of the earlier statements, we hope that is very terrible. Here, the equivalent of that is cultural programs allow you to feel closer. Okay. Well, anything will allow you to do anything. I'm allowing you guys to leave now if you want. You're allowing me to read this stuff. That doesn't mean I will. So allowing is like hoping. We don't want statements that are allowing or hoping or it might happen or it will, right? We want this will do this. This will bring in these people, blah, 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 blah. Let's go to the next one.
Okay, I think this will be our last one for the night. And then anyone who we couldn't get to, I'll send you notes personally with reviewing your statements. So thank you again for everyone who submitted.
All right, let's have a look at this artist statement. This artist statement is very intriguing, right? It's interesting just to see using food as a social sculpture and catalyst. And I also see a community asset mapping approach. But there are still some dots that are not connected. I don't see exactly what the artwork and process is. I'm not seeing, are we bringing people together to eat food, and she's creating food sculptures? Is it displayed somewhere? Is it photos of it? Like, there's stuff that I'm missing here. I don't quite get how the community asset mapping approach is connected. Like, how, again, are we mapping which communities are using what kinds of food? It's interesting but vague. So it's sort of okay as an artist statement, because artist statements are kind of okay if they're a little bit vague sometimes. I mean, you've heard me demand a lot of clarity earlier in the thing, in this event. You know, this is kind of so-so, I would say. It has the elements of a good artist statement, but it's lacking clarity on a little bit more specificity that I would like. Let's look at the project description. Okay, again, I don't see enough specifics about the project. I am starting to gather that this project might involve other people cooking and not just Nadine cooking, but that's a guess. It's not stated point blank. It facilitates transformations. It's the process of engaging in cooking and art. Okay, who's engaging in it? How many people are going to be cooking? Are people cooking together? Sort of, I'm guessing, maybe, right? The ideas are great, like what you want to accomplish, what the philosophical messages is on point. It's beautiful, but I don't know. Are we going to have a workshop where 20 people are going to be invited to cook together with such and such ingredients on such and such a date at such and such a venue from people from that community? It's not there, right? It is all philosophical and not concrete enough. Let's look at the community impact statement. Okay, have a look. Here I'm seeing more specificity about community that I like. I'm seeing what are the problems in a community that are trying to be addressed, right? Chronic illness, unhealthy behaviors, lack of preventive health care, Black and Latino residents, people with these specific diseases, and how food can impact them. I also see New Haven. Okay, I didn't get that until this community impact statement. I would have liked to have known that this was in New Haven in the project description, for example, but at least I have it in the community impact statement. Okay, again, through the process of making food and art, there's some grammar issues here that are also preventing me from knowing exactly what. Through the process of making food and art can nurture an improvement in how eat, teach us to be cooperative. Okay, I can fill in the gaps with the grammar and kind of figure out what's trying to be said, but there's still some conceptual gaps in the sentence. Who is it that's going to make food together? How is that making of food together going to teach us to be cooperative? How is it going to cause us to arrive at more conscientious solutions for self-reliance? I can, based on this statement, based on my knowledge of a human being, of like bringing people together through food and communal cooking and communal sharing of food to create community and deeper connections to food. I can figure out that something like that is going to happen, and it's beautiful. It sounds beautiful, but the specificity has to be there for panelists, and it's not enough of it is there. Some of the components, the which communities to be served are there, the where, the New Haven aspect that should have been above, and the problems are there, but the specificity of how this is going to come together, who's going to be invited, when it's going to happen, what is the long-term impact, how the moment of the project is going to spill into that, it's all missing there.
So I think, thank you, Sami. I think we're a little bit over. I want to appreciate everyone for, staying a little bit longer, but also thank you to Sami for his pretty, really great reviews and notes. Again, thank you to everyone who submitted. If we have, unfortunately, we ran out of time at the end, so we have a few that I'll be sending you notes on your submissions, so keep an eye out for those. Just a small plug for our art services department. We're really looking forward to hosting a new grant program for artists and organizations in Queens. It's called the Arts Grants for Queens. There'll be two, one for community arts grants for organizations, and Artists in Queens will be for individual artists. But also take a look at our artist services. We'll be having other professional development workshops down the road, and other opportunities. And like Sami mentioned, we have a resource page that you can take a look at for other grant opportunities, and hopefully more information about grant writing, budgeting, fiscal sponsorship. We're going to make it a whole thing. But again, thank you all for joining us. Thank you to Sami for his time and his insights. And yeah, just stay in touch. You're on our email list. This is a new department, and it's something that we're really passionate about, working with artists like all of you, and being able to support Queens artists throughout the city, anyone who wants to join our Flushing Town Hall family. Mine and Nancy and Sami's emails are all here, but if y'all have any questions, please reach out to me directly. I'll be happy to answer anything I can as fast as I can, but we'll be having a lot coming down the pike for our department. So thanks again to Sami. Sam, do you have anything else you want to send us off with?
Sure. So you guys are all geniuses. I believe that. Your goal in grant writing is to communicate as succinctly as possible so people can understand what is it that you're doing, so that they have a chance to see your genius. So don't communicate your genius. Communicate what you're doing so that people have a chance to digest it.
Great. Thank you, Sami. And yes, so this has been recorded. We'll share the link to you all, and please share it with all your artist friends. And if you know any artists that would benefit from programs like these, like grants like the ones that we're about to offer, send them our way. We're here to just show that Queens artists, we're here in force, and we're doing really great work. And it's not just the other boroughs, right? So yeah, looking forward to staying in touch, looking forward to working together, and thank you all again. So please feel free to email us and stay in touch. So we'll be sending a survey probably early tomorrow. If you could just let us know how we're doing, but also we want to hear feedback of what you're hoping to see in an arts services department like ours. Please don't hold back, just like Sami doesn't. So thanks everyone, and yeah, we'll be in touch.
Thank you all.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.